A widow named Cora Ellison dropped a fistful of pale oval seeds into a spent bean bed in Ohio last week of July. 1,936. 4 children in the house. No husband, no money to send to town. From that one patch, those 4 kids ate from October straight through to March. The crop she planted that morning is on your seed rack right now for $2 a packet. The 6th piece of what she knew, that is the one they buried hardest. We will get to it before the end. She did not have a freezer. She did not have a truck. She had a bean bed that had already given her one crop that summer, a hoe, and about 11 cents worth of seed. And the county record for that year lists her occupation as none. No income. 4 children, ages 4 to 13, and not one of them went hungry between the first frost and the last one. Now here is the part that ought to sting a little, and I do not say it to shame you. Most folks watching me tonight could not name what she put in that ground, could not name it, could not grow it, and if the store shut its doors on a Tuesday in January, could not feed the people under their own roof for 9 days off their own dirt. That is not a moral failing, friend. I want to be plain about that before we go one step further. Your grandmother did not fail to teach you. The world just got fast, and the old ways got quiet, and there was money in them getting quiet. That is nobody's sin. But it can be mended, and it can be mended this month for less than the price of a sandwich. Before we go on, there is one number I want in your head. 3 days. That is what the grocery stores in this country hold on the shelf and in the back room for the folks in their service area. 3 days, and the trucks have to come again. Your great-grandfather's pantry held a winter. The difference between those 2 houses was never money. It was knowing. I put the knowing I have into one book, 94 pages. Water, fire, curing, the root cellar, the plants that heal, and the plants that kill. It is at christiansmucker.com. And I will tell you plain, because folks my age have been burned on this, there is a paper copy, printed and bound and mailed to your door, for those of you who do not trust the machine. And there is a copy you read on the machine, cheaper if you do. I will not bring it up again. All right, back to it. What Cora Ellison planted that morning was a turnip, purple top white globe. Open-pollinated in American seed catalogs since the 1840s, still on the rack today between the radishes and the beets, and most folks walk right past it because they think a turnip is a punishment. That is the whole subject of this video. 1 packet, 1 bed, 1 evening's work in the hottest week of the summer on ground that has already given you a crop. And by the time we are finished, you will know how to sow it, how to eat it twice off 1 planting, how many feet of row your family actually needs, how to hold it from October to March with no refrigerator and no electricity, and how to make the seed for next year so you never hand a packet seller another $1 as long as you live. Before we get into it, tap subscribe. Not for me. Because we are pulling this old self-fed way of eating back onto the homestead, 1 crop at a time, and the folks who own the winter produce aisle would rather you never relearned it. I am Christian Smucker. I am Amish. I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. And my wife Mary says I talk slow, which is true. But slow talk carries fewer lies. My nephew works the camera and puts these up for me. Our bishop permits it for the teaching, and I hold to that. As for what I am about to give you, none of it is mine. My grandfather, Amish Smucker, kept his notes penciled inside the front cover of the family Bible, which is the only book on this farm that never got lent out, and that is exactly why he wrote in it. 3 and 4 words to a line. That Bible sits on the desk to my left as I talk. He fed 9 people through the Depression off ground that is now my Southfield, and he made me promise the knowing would not go in the ground with him. This is me keeping my word. There are 6 pieces to doing this right. Most folks who try a turnip patch botch it because they miss one. The first 5 you can pick up in a single afternoon, and if you stop there, you will eat well from October to Christmas and be glad you tried. But the 6th piece is the one they buried hardest, and it is the one that turns this from a nice fall crop into a crop that feeds you into March, next year, and every year after that, without ever handing another packet seller $1. We build to it. I am not going to make you wait to the very last minute for it either. It gets a full share of this video because it is the only piece that makes you free instead of just fed. And I want to say something about why you never learned this, because it is not a mystery and it is not a conspiracy. Between roughly 1,945 and 1,965, 3 things happened to the American winter table inside a single lifetime. Refrigerators came down out of the rich neighborhoods and into every kitchen in the country. The interstate trucking system went in, and a head of lettuce cut in California could be laid out in an Ohio grocery aisle in 3 days. And the chain supermarket produce section, that cold, bright room you now walk through every week without thinking, opened its doors coast to coast. In one lifetime, the job of feeding a family through the winter moved off the back of a widow with a July turnip patch and onto a truck that pulls up to a loading dock at 4 in the morning. Nobody outlawed the turnip. Nobody had to. They just made sure the winter grocery bill got paid to somebody else. And I do not call that a conspiracy. I think it is worse than a conspiracy, honestly, because nobody had to sit down in a room and arrange it. It simply paid better that way, for everybody except you. So the question tonight is not what we lost. The question is, who is getting paid because we forgot, and how you take that winter bill back with $2 and 1 evening. Let me tell you the 6 pieces, and let me tell them slow. The first piece is what you plant, and the exact week you put it in the ground. Get this one wrong and nothing else in the system matters, because you cannot fix a wrong variety or a wrong date with any amount of care later on. The variety is purple top white globe, open pollinated. It says so on the packet. Sometimes it says heirloom, sometimes it just says OP in small letters on the back. Any open pollinated garden turnip will run this system. Golden Ball will. Tokyo Cross will not, because that one is a hybrid. But Purple Top is the one that has been feeding this country the longest, and it is the one you will find easiest. What you must not buy for this system is a packet marked F1, and I am going to tell you why, right here in the shopping step, not save it for the end, because the why is the whole reason this video exists. A hybrid cannot reproduce true to itself. Plant the seed off an F1 turnip and you get a scattered mess. Some woody, some bolting, some fine. So you have to come back and buy the packet again next year and the year after, forever. That is a bill sold to you as convenience. Read the packet. If it says F1, put it back on the rack. Now the week. You want about 10 weeks of growing weather before your first hard freeze. Not your first light frost, your first hard freeze, the one that stiffens the ground. So find your local first frost date and count back 10 weeks, and that is your sowing week. For most of the middle of this country, that lands in the last week of July or the first 10 days of August. Here in Lancaster County, I go the last week of July, right after the second cutting of hay is off, because the bean bed is empty by then and my hands are free. And for the folks in zones 7 and 8, down where the ground does not truly freeze, you have a second window most people never use. You can sow again in the first 2 weeks of September and pull roots in late November and December, because a turnip does not mind cold, it minds heat. 2 sowings 3 weeks apart is even better than 1. That way a hot spell that kills your first stand does not cost you the winter. For my friends watching from Australia, flip the calendar. Your week for this comes in late January. My grandfather's line in the Bible cover for this reads, "Last week, July, purple top, row along the beans." That is 9 words. That was the entire plan that fed 9 people. Now let me answer the question nobody answers. which is how much do you actually plant. Folks put in 8 feet of turnips, eat them all in November, and decide the system does not work. Here's the honest number. Figure 35 to 40 feet of row for each person you intend to feed through the winter, and that assumes you are eating turnips as a side dish, 2 or 3 suppers a week, not every night. 35 row feet, thinned right, gives you somewhere between 40 and 60 roots, plus greens all fall. For a family of 4, that is a bed about 140 feet of row, which sounds enormous until you understand that is only 4 rows, 12 inches apart in a bed 35 feet long. That is a strip of ground about 4 feet wide. That is smaller than most folks' front lawn. If you have half of that, plant half, and know going in that you are eating turnips through January and not through March, and that is still 100 and something suppers you did not buy. Here is your whole list, and here is what it cost me at the farm and garden store in Intercourse this season. And I want to say the same thing I always say about prices, which is that whatever I tell you tonight will be a little higher by the time you go, the way things have run these last few years. So add a little in your head, and do not be surprised. 1 packet of open pollinated purple top white globe seed, $2.79, and I have seen it as high as $3.50. That packet holds somewhere around 2,000 seeds, which is far more than you need, which is why I tell folks to go in with a neighbor. If you are planting for 4 people, buy the 1-ounce bulk packet instead, $4 and change, about 12,000 seeds, and you will have seed left over for 2 more years. 1 bale of clean straw. $9.50 here, cheaper if you know a farmer, and you do not need the whole bale, you need about 1/3 of it. 1 shovel of finished compost per running foot of row, free if you have a pile. $5 and change a bag if you do not. 1 cheap dial thermometer for the storage box later on, $11. Do not skip this one. I will tell you why in a bit. 1 wooden crate or a plastic tote, and 1 bag of clean play sand, $7 and change for 50 pounds at the hardware store. That is the whole outlay, under $40, and better than half of it is one time. The seed, which is the only part you truly cannot do without, is under $3. Now hold that number, because a bunch of turnip greens in the February produce aisle runs $3 to $4 and feeds 1 person, 1 supper, and a bag of roots runs about the same. 1 packet sown right is 4 months of that supper. The second piece is how you actually put the seed in the ground. 2 numbers to remember. Miss either one, and you get half a stand or a tangled mat of roots that never size up. The depth is 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch. No deeper. I know your instinct in July is to bury it away from the sun, and that instinct is exactly what kills the crop, because deeper means the seed sits down in dry dirt below the wetting line and never breaks the surface. 1/4 inch. The depth of your fingernail. The row spacing is 12 to 18 inches apart. 12 if your bed is small and you are willing to thin ruthlessly. 18 if you want to walk the row and hoe the weeds without stepping on your crop. Here is the way you do it. The bed is wherever an early crop just came off. Peas, early beans, spring lettuce, spent garlic. Pull the residue, rake the surface smooth. Work in that shovel of finished compost per foot of row. Level it flat. Do not use fresh manure on this bed. Well, rotted only. And nothing green inside of 120 days of harvest, because this is a leafy crop and a root crop both, and your family is going to eat it raw sometimes. That is a food safety line, and I do not bend it. Scratch a shallow furrow with the corner of a hoe. Drop the seed thin along it, thinner than feels right, because turnip seed is no bigger than a pinhead, and it all pours out at once if you are not careful. Cover with fine soil to the depth of your fingernail. Then press the row down with the flat of your hand or walk it with the sole of your boot. That contact between seed and moist soil is the thing that triggers germination. Loose, fluffy soil over the seed is the single most common reason a row never comes up. Water it in immediately, not a flood, a gentle soak that wets the top inch. Do it the evening you sow, and again the next morning if the sun looks hard. Quarter inch deep, 12 to 18 inches between rows. Pressed down, watered in. That is the whole specification, and here is what I find worth sitting with. The University of Minnesota Extension, present-day bulletin, this year says it plain. Turnips a quarter to a half inch deep, rows 12 to 18 inches apart, thin to 3 to 4 inches. Those are the same numbers my grandfather penciled inside a Bible cover in 1943 with an 8th grade education and no bulletin at all. The land-grant university did not teach him. It confirmed him, 80 years later. That is the one part you do not skip, the pressing down. This week, buy the packet, $2.79. Put it in the kitchen drawer where you will see it. That gets the seed in the ground. The next piece is where most folks lose the crop, and it happens before they ever taste a thing. Now stop with me a moment. Everything I have told you so far, your grandfather could have taught you in a single afternoon standing in the garden. Buy this. Plant it this week, this deep, this far apart. What is coming next is the piece the seed rack and the produce aisle and even the extension pamphlet all got very quiet about somewhere between 1,950 and 1,970. And it is the piece that turns a turnip patch into a two-season food supply instead of a fall novelty. The third piece is that this crop feeds you twice off one sowing. Cora Ellison never wasted a leaf on that patch. She ate it as a green through August and September, and she dug it as a root from October onward. 2 crops, 1 planting, 1 packet, 1 bed. And the greens are the half that almost everybody throws in the compost. Here is the schedule, and I want to walk it slow, because the timing is the whole thing. 4 weeks after you sow, when the seedlings are 3 to 4 inches tall, you thin. Pull the weakest and the crowded ones. Leave the strongest every 3 to 4 inches down the row. Do not throw the thinnings away. Rinse them twice in cold water and cook them. Those are the first supper that bed feeds you, and you have not spent a thing. Once the plants stand 8 to 10 inches tall, you begin cutting greens. Go out in the cool of the morning while the leaves are still stiff with dew, and cut the outer leaves with your thumbnail. Low, right at the base. Take 1 or 2 outer leaves per plant, never more than 1/3 of the plant at any one cutting, and leave the crown, that little tuft of new leaves, right at the center, completely alone. The crown is the factory. Cut the crown and the plant is finished. Now here is the number folks want and nobody gives them. You can take a cutting every 10 to 14 days, and you will get roughly 4 to 6 cuttings off a stand before the root begins to suffer. Past about 6, or if you get greedy and take half the leaf area at once, the root stalls out and stays the size of a walnut. And you have traded a winter of roots for 3 suppers of greens. That is the trade, plainly stated. If you want big roots for the cellar, take 3 cuttings and stop by the middle of September. If you have a small bed and you want food now, take 6 and accept small roots. My grandmother took 4 and never argued about it. And the greens themselves, do not look down on them. A turnip top is a mustard family green, close kin to a collard, and it carries more of what your body needs in a February than nearly anything you can buy. Cook them the way we do here, in a pot with a little water, a spoon of lard or bacon grease, and a pinch of salt. 25 minutes until they are tender. Wash them twice in cold water first. Twice. Sand hides in the ribs at the base of the leaf, and there is no forgiving a gritty pot of greens. That is the one part you do not skip. Now here is something the original way of doing this never had, and I am glad to have it. You can put the tops up for winter. Blanch them, which means drop the washed leaves into rolling water for 2 minutes, exactly 2, then straight into a bowl of cold water with ice to stop them cooking. Squeeze the water out with your hands into a bowl, pack them in bags or jars, and freeze. 2 minutes is the number, and the reason is not softness, it is enzymes. There are enzymes in a fresh leaf that keep working in the freezer and turn it bitter and gray by January. 2 minutes of boiling water kills them, and the leaf holds its color and its taste for 10 to 12 months. Blanched and frozen turnip greens will hold a year. Unblanched, they go off in about 6 weeks and taste like grass clippings. If you have no freezer, the greens can be dried on screens in a warm, airy room until they crumble, and crumbled dry greens go into soup all winter long. When the roots reach 2 to 3 inches across at the shoulder, start pulling. 2 inches. That is about the width of the seed packet you started with, and Minnesota Extension says the same. Harvest turnips at 2 to 3 inches in diameter. Bigger is not better. Bigger is woody. My grandfather's line for this reads, thin at 4, cut at 10, pull at 3. 6 words and a whole calendar. The fourth piece is how you keep the bed alive through the worst 2 weeks of the summer. Because what you are doing here is asking a cool season plant to break ground in the hottest stretch of the year. That is a fight, and you win it with water and straw and shade and nothing else. You know it is working when you walk past the row at first light on day 5 and see 1,000 tiny green loops arching up out of the soil, still wet from the night. You know it is failing when the surface crusts over and cracks like a dry creek bed by noon on day 3. And nothing has come up. Here is what you do. Sow at dusk, never at noon. Water immediately. Lay a thin blanket of clean straw over the row, about the thickness of your hand. Loose, not packed. Then water, morning and evening for the first 10 days. Just enough to keep the top half-inch damp, not soaked. As soon as the seedlings show, rake that straw off the row and leave it in the walkways as mulch. If your sun is brutal where you live, prop an old bed sheet or a scrap of shade cloth a foot above the bed on sticks for the first week. That is old, and it is cheap, and it works. Once the seedlings are 2 inches tall, switch to watering deep and less often, twice a week, to pull the roots down. And never water overhead in the heat of the day. Water goes on the ground at dusk or at dawn. My grandfather's line for this one is the shortest in the whole Bible cover. Sow at dusk, straw down, wet twice. 6 words. And that is the entire heat management plan of a man who left school at 13. The Extension Bulletin says the same thing today in 3 paragraphs of Latin. I will tell you about the first patch I put in alone. I was 14. I sowed it in the middle of a hot afternoon because I was bored and waiting on supper, and I wanted it over with. The bed dried to a crust by noon the next day, and better than half that seed never came up. My grandfather walked out, looked at the row for a while, and did not say one word about it. He just went into the shed and handed me another packet and told me to put the second round in after the sun was off the bed. Cost me a packet, taught me the crop. You will botch one somewhere too, friend. That is not the end of the system. That is how a person learns it. Now, some of you are going to ask about substitutions, and you are right to ask. Can you use rutabaga instead of turnip? You can, and it stores even better and longer, but it needs 90 to 100 days instead of 55, so it must go in a full month earlier in late June, and it will not give you the greens the same way. Can you use a hybrid packet if that is all the store has? You can eat that crop just fine. It will grow. It just cannot carry you into the 6th piece. So treat it as a 1-year rental. Can you sow into a bed that had cabbage or broccoli or kale this spring? I would rather you did not, because those are all the same family and the soil diseases and the root maggots carry right over. Move to a bed that had beans or peas or corn. What you must not substitute is fresh manure for compost. And what you must not skip is the pressing down of the row. Now, before I go on, I want to say a plain word about who else eats off this patch, Because in our district, the turnip has never been only a people crop. The tops you cut and do not use, and the thinnings, and every root that comes up split or cracked or nicked by the digging fork, all of that goes to the hens and to the milk cow. Chickens will strip a pile of turnip tops in an afternoon and their yolks come up darker for it, and in January a dark yolk is worth something. Roots go to the cow chopped or split, never whole, and I mean that seriously. A whole turnip can lodge in a cow's throat and choke her. Split them. And feed them after milking, not before, or the milk carries the taste, and Mary will have something to say to me about it. Now, there is a distinction here that catches folks out. There are turnip varieties bred specifically for stock, sold as fodder turnips, names like purple top forage or appin or barkant, and those are a different thing. They are sown broadcast into a pasture. They make a lot of top and a coarse root, and they are grazed in place by sheep and cattle in November. They are fine at that job. Number 1. They are not a table turnip, and they do not store worth a nickel in a box. If you are feeding a family, buy the garden variety. If you are feeding 20 ewes, buy the forage variety. Do not let a feed store clerk sell you one for the other. Now notice something. Notice what none of this has cost you so far. A packet of seed under $3, a third of a bale of straw, and some evening water. What is coming next is the piece that replaces the appliance in your kitchen that runs 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and shows up on your electric bill every single month of your life. The fifth piece is how you hold this crop from October to March without a refrigerator. This is the piece that decides whether Cora Ellison's patch fed her children in November or fed them all the way to the last frost. The mechanism first, because if you understand this, you will never need me again. A turnip you pulled in October is not dead. It is a live root, still breathing, slowly burning its own sugars. Cold slows that breathing down almost to a stop. Humidity keeps it from giving up its water and going limp. That is the entire science of a root cellar, and the extension services still teach it exactly that way. Cool and humid slows the respiration of a root. That is not folklore. That is plant biology, and it has not changed one bit since Cora's day. What changed is that somebody put a white box in your kitchen and told you the corner of your crawl space was primitive. That corner of the crawl space runs on nothing at all and holds a winter of food. Your refrigerator runs on a meter and holds a week. The specification is as close to freezing as you can hold without freezing, and as humid as you can get without water dripping. In numbers, 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit and 90 to 95% humidity. Above 45 degrees, the roots sprout and go soft on you inside a month. That is why I told you to buy the $11 thermometer. Guessing at this costs more than the thermometer. Here is how you pull and put up. Pull on a dry day when the ground is not muddy. Twist the tops off about an inch above the crown. Do not cut them with a knife. Twist them, because twisting seals the wound, and a knife cut weeps and invites rot. Do not wash the roots. I know it goes against everything in you. Brush the loose dirt off with a gloved hand and leave the rest. Water on a stored root is what starts the rot. And sort as you go. Any root with a soft spot, a crack, a nick from the fork, that one does not go in the box. Those get eaten in the first 2 weeks, or go to the hens. Only sound roots store. The simple version, and this is what I would have most of you do the first year. 1 wooden crate or a plastic tote with a few holes punched in the sides. A bag of clean sand, dampened until it holds together when you squeeze it, but does not drip. Then you layer. Sand. Roots not touching each other. Sand. Roots. Sand. And finish with 2 inches of sand on top. Set that box in an unheated basement corner, or a garage that stays above freezing, or a crawl space. Check it once a month. That box will hold turnips 4 to 5 months, and beets and carrots right alongside them. And for those of you living small, and I know a great many of you are, in a trailer or an apartment or a room with no cold corner anywhere in it. Here is your version. A 5-gallon bucket, damp sand, same layering, lid set on loose and not sealed. Put that bucket in an unheated stairwell or on an enclosed porch or in the back of a closet against an outside wall, which is always the coldest wall in the place. You will get less than the 4 months, you will get 2 or 3, and you will need to check it every 2 weeks instead of every month. But 2 or 3 months of food out of a bucket in a closet, that is not nothing. That is November, December, and January. Now the old-time version, for the folks with a piece of ground and no cellar, and this is a thing almost nobody builds anymore, and it works beautifully. It is called a clamp, or a pit. Pick a spot that drains, high ground, never a low place where water sits. Dig out about 6 inches of soil in a circle 4 or 5 feet across, and dig a shallow trench all the way around the outside of that circle to carry water away. That trench is the part people skip, and it is the part that saves the whole thing. Line the hollow with 4 inches of clean, dry straw. Pile your sound roots in a cone, the shape of a small haystack, up to 2 or 3 feet tall. Cover the whole cone with 8 to 10 inches of straw. Then shovel the soil you dug out back over the straw, 6 inches of it, patting it smooth so the rain runs off, and leave 1 wisp of straw sticking out the very top like a chimney so the pile can breathe. A clamp built that way will hold roots through a Pennsylvania winter at close to 35 degrees without 1 watt of anything. The one hard rule is that you open it once and you take everything out, because once you have broken the seal in January, you cannot get it closed tight again. So build 3 small clamps instead of 1 large one, and open them one at a time. The tell that it is working is firm roots, a wet look to them, cold air on your face that smells like earth and clean stone. The tell that it is failing is a soft spot, a blackening at the crown, or a sour, fermented smell when you lift the lid. Pull the bad one out that same day, or it takes its neighbors with it. Now let me give you the trouble list, because things will go wrong, and I would rather you knew the cause than guessed. Woody, stringy roots. The cause is nearly always that you let them get too big, or you let the bed go dry and then flooded it. Fix it by pulling at 2 to 3 inches and watering steady instead of in panics. Bitter roots, that is heat. A turnip that's sized up in 85-degree weather turns sharp. Fix it by sowing later, not earlier, and by leaving them in the ground through a couple of light frosts. Because a frost genuinely does sweeten the root, it converts starch to sugar as a kind of antifreeze. Frosted turnips are better turnips. Roots with brown tunnels bored through them. That is the cabbage root maggot, and it is the one real pest of this crop. The fly lays at the base of the stem. Fix it by rotating out of any bed that grew a brassica this year, and by laying a floating row cover over the bed from the day you sow until the seedlings are established. Wood ash worked into the row helps some. Once the maggot is in the root, there is no cure, so this one is all prevention. Plants that shoot up a flower stalk in the fall instead of making a root. That is bolting, and it means you sowed too early in June heat, or you got a hard, cold snap right after germination. Fix it by holding to the 10-week rule. Now I will tell you plainly what this system will not do, because I do not want you disappointed with me in November. It will not feed you protein. It is a vegetable. It is not a meal by itself, and any man who tells you one crop feeds a family is selling something. It will not carry past about April, no matter how good your storage is, because come spring the root wants to grow and it will sprout on you. It will not do a thing for you if you plant 15 feet of row and expect a winter. And it will not work in a bed you cannot water for the first 10 days. So if you are going away in August, plant it in September instead, or skip the year. Here is the honest math, and I have run it on my own ground. Say you buy the 1-ounce bulk seed for $4 and change. Straw and compost you have, and the storage box and thermometer come to about $19. One time. Forever. Call it $24 the first year and $4 every year after. Against that, a family of 4 eating turnips and greens 3 suppers a week from October through March is roughly 78 suppers of vegetables. At the $3 to $4 that produce aisle wants for enough greens or roots for 4 people, that is somewhere between $230 and $310 of grocery, honestly counted. For a first-year cost of $24. And I want to be careful here. That is not free food. You paid for it in July evenings with a watering can. But that is the trade the old people made every year, and they thought it a good one, and so do I. And that brings us to the 6th piece. The one they buried hardest. Cora Ellison. That widow in the Ohio garden, 1,936, 4 children, no husband, a milk goat, and a dozen hens. Here is the piece I did not tell you at the start. She had been planting that same turnip patch for 11 years by 1936, and she had not bought a packet of seed since the year her husband was still living. She was carrying the crop forward herself. That is the real reason she never handed a grocer $1 between the frosts. She was not just growing a winter of food. Every year she was also growing next year's seed. Here is how it is done, and it takes 2 years, because a turnip is a biennial. That word just means the plant makes the root the first year and the seed the second year, and it will not make seed at all until it has been through a cold winter. The old word for that is vernalization. Cold is the key that unlocks the flower. So in October, when you are pulling roots for the box, set aside your keepers. Not the biggest ones, the best ones. The best shaped, the healthiest, the truest to the variety, the ones with a clean purple shoulder and a white globe below. And here's a number that matters more than any other in this piece. Save at least 12 plants, and 20 is better, not 2 or 3. A turnip is an outcrossing plant. It needs its neighbors to make seed. And if you save down to 3 or 4 plants year after year, the line narrows and inbreeds. And in 4 or 5 seasons, you will have small, weak roots and wonder what went wrong. 20 plants keeps the line strong indefinitely. That is the mistake that ends most people's seed saving, and almost nobody warns them. In a cold climate, pack those keepers in damp sand like the eating roots, hold them all winter, and replant them in early spring, crowned just at the soil line, 18 inches apart. In a mild climate, zone 7 and warmer, simply leave 20 plants in the ground under a foot of mulch and let them do it themselves. Come spring, those roots bolt. They send up a stalk 3 to 4 feet tall, then yellow blossoms that the bees will find from a long way off, then long thin pods. And now, the one caution. Turnips will cross with other turnips, and with Chinese cabbage and bok choy and some mustards, because they are all the same species underneath. They will not cross with your broccoli or your cabbage or your kale. Those are a different species, and you can grow them right alongside. So, if a neighbor is flowering turnips 100 feet away, your seed will be a mix of the two. The textbook isolation distance is half a mile. On a home place, that is impossible, and I will not pretend otherwise. What we do instead is agree in the neighborhood who flowers turnips which year, or you throw a fine mesh bag over the flowering stalks and shake them by hand every other morning for 2 weeks. That is not hard work. That is 10 minutes with a coffee cup in your other hand. When the pods dry brown on the plant, but before they split, cut the stalks. Do not wait for every last pod. You will lose them. Hang the stalks upside down inside a paper sack in a dry, airy place for 2 weeks. Then shake the sack and thresh the pods between your palms. Pour it back and forth between 2 bowls in front of a fan or a doorway breeze, and the chaff blows off and the seed stays. 20 plants will give you thousands of seeds, far more than one family can use. Dry them another week, spread on a plate, put them in a paper envelope inside a lidded jar, and keep it cool and dark and dry. Turnip seed stays good 4 to 5 years, and I have had seed sprout at 6 with about half of it coming up. So 1 seed year covers you for 4, which means that after that second spring, you are done. Done buying it. forever. And that is why they patented hybrids, friend. Not because a hybrid tastes better. It does not. Because a saved seed is a bill they will never collect from you again. Cora Ellison worked that out in 1925, and it is still true tonight. Now let me say the whole thing once more, slow, for the folks with a pencil. Purple top, white globe. Open pollinated, not F1. Sow 10 weeks before your first hard freeze. Last week of July for most of you. A 1/4 inch deep. Rows 12 to 18 inches apart. Press the row down. Water it in at dusk. Straw over the row, a hand thick. Water morning and evening for 10 days. Thin at 3 to 4 inches tall. To one plant every 3 to 4 inches. Eat the thinnings. Cut greens at 8 to 10 inches tall. 1 or 2 outer leaves per plant. Never more than a third. Every 10 to 14 days, 4 to 6 cuttings, then stop. Blanch greens 2 minutes exactly before freezing. They hold 10 to 12 months. Pull roots at 2 to 3 inches across. Twist the tops, do not cut. Do not wash. Store at 32 to 40 degrees. High humidity, layered in damp sand. 4 to 5 months. Save 20 of your best roots. Overwinter them. Replant in spring. Bag or isolate the flowers. Dry the pods. Seed keeps 4 to 5 years. 35 to 40 row feet per person. That is the whole of it. Now, you do not have to build all 6 pieces this week. Do one thing between now and Saturday. Go to the farm and garden store and buy 1 packet of open pollinated purple top white globe. $2.79, maybe $3.50 by the time you get there. Put it in the kitchen drawer. Then on the last week of July, put it in the ground at dusk. That is the whole first step, and it is a small one. And every single thing I have told you tonight grows out of it. This was never really about a turnip. It was about being the kind of person who does not have to ask a produce aisle whether their family eats in February. Your grandfather could do this. Your great-grandmother did do this. And somewhere between 1945 and 1965, the truck pulled up to the loading dock and nobody got the chance to hand it down to you. That is what I am here for. Tonight, that piece of knowing lives in your house again, and it is yours to hand on. A word of caution before I let you go. If you see somebody down in the comments pushing some miracle book I never named, that is not me and it is not a friend of mine. I have the one book and it lives at christiansmucker.com and nowhere else on this earth. Mary has the last of the sweet corn on the line as I am talking to you, and there are 3 quarts of chow chow on the counter that she says are mine to carry down cellar, so I had best go. The old folks in our church have a saying, take all you want but eat all you take. And a turnip patch is the same thing. Plant what your family will finish and no more. And I will say something else. If you spent your working life at this trade, if you farmed or you gardened for a living or your mother did, and I got a thing wrong or only half right up there, I want to hear it. I am not too old to be corrected. So tell me down below, did your people plant a fall turnip patch, or was it something else where you are from? Rutabaga, storage cabbage, fall spinach, parsnips left in the ground all winter. And tell me what your grandmother did that nobody in your family does anymore. The crop that gets the most comments is the one I go deep on next, and I read every single one of them. Half my best videos started as somebody's memory down there. And tell me what county you write from. I like to know where you all are. Next time, the one plant my grandfather grew along the fence line that fed his whole flock for free through a Lancaster winter, and the year the feed companies made sure it quietly left the seed rack. Keep the old ways, they kept. The Lord bless you and keep you, and I will see you next time, if we are spared and willing.